Hope everybody is now connected. Distinct participants, PAFO members, partners, our panelists today, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are connecting from. It is with pleasure that I welcome you all again to our online sessions organized by PAFO and COLEACP in the context of our partnership. My name is Titine. I'm the PAFO Programs Officer. I'm representing Dr. Babafemi, the CEO of the Pan-African Farmers Organization, who was not able to join us due to other engagement. Nowadays, the increasing food crisis is becoming a major concern and a threat to humankind. With an increasing population and crises such as insecurities, climate change, and impact of COVID-19, it is necessary for all of us to act together to protect and promote our food systems for a sustainable, healthier, and accessible food for all. Having this in mind, the Pan-African Farmers Organization, in partnership with COLEACP, we are organizing our 11th sessions of innovations to promote African innovations that are contributing to the reduction of food loss and waste across the value chain. In today's session, you are going to hear some of inspiring stories from SMEs, from businesses on how their innovations are contributing to circular economy on the continent. Later, we will also have an opportunity to hear from our discussant on what should be done to promote and support those kind of innovations. So it has been now almost 2 years that we are organizing this kind of virtual event, each 2 months around different thematics that are of interest to African farmers, to agriculture sector in Africa. So you can still watch our previous sessions either on YouTube channel of PAFO or COLEACP. So for logistical matters, please note that we have English and French interpretation available to you. And this session will be recorded for later publication. So for those who may have questions later, please use the chat box. We will later have a time to consolidate your questions, your comments for our panelists to respond. So without further ado, allow me to welcome my colleague, Mrs. Isolina Boto, the head of Networks and Alliance at COLEACP, who will be moderating the session. So as for me, I thank you once again for taking your time to be with us today, and I wish you all a fruitful discussion. Thank you. Over, Isolina.
Thank you very much, Emerance, and thank you for your efforts in joining us from Cameroon, actually, with not a very, very good link today. So without major delay, with a nice introduction from Emerance, we are going to listen to the interesting part from the SMEs and entrepreneurs. And then in the second part, we will have a bit of insights from some of the ecosystems supporting the entrepreneurs into the ones that are really trying to reduce or to address the food loss and food waste issue. So we start by Rose Noah. Rose Noah is the CEO of West African Feeds, Kemprotein in Ghana. She's building a social enterprise, and she's also the founder of the West African Feeds, a Ghanaian-based insect animal feed production, with focusing really on recycling organic waste into agri-feeds for small-scale poultry and fish farmers. So she will tell us she's not only on the business side, but very much involved on the social side, supporting education for children, financial literacy for her staff and many others around, and of course all the entrepreneurship development she's very much actually passionate about. So please, Rose, the floor is yours. And thank you for joining from Ghana.
Thank you. Bonjour, everyone. Thank you for having me on the call. I'm sharing my screen.
And in 10 minutes, please, Rose.
All right. Okay. I've shared my screen.
We can see it, Rose.
Great. All right, my name is Rose Noah, and I'm the CEO of West African Feeds, Africa's #1 source of climate positive insect-based feed alternatives and nutritional products. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, we approximate a loss of over $42 billion in crops and livestock production over the last 14 years. This led us to the $42 billion question. How do we supplement Africa's food supply with climate shock resistant food alternatives while curbing Africa's 1.38 billion tons greenhouse gas problem? So now $42 billion is life-changing for any continent. As a Ghanaian woman, I'm passionate about my people, and I began to brainstorm on how I can address this issue. So in 2019, Desire created circumstances and opportunities that led me to co-founding West African Feed, a globally focused biotech firm that enables the average farmer to convert waste into most basic ingredients to human and animal life, which is protein. So at West African Feed, what's our process? We first start by sourcing food waste from food producers, market centers, and restaurants. The collected waste is then fed to our black soldier fly larvae. Over a period of 2 weeks, the larvae go to work and convert carbon dioxide from the food waste into body mass, which we then extract in a form of insect protein and also insect oil. Our business model is very simple, and we focus on creating value for B2B and B2C markets. So our B2B customers like feed mailers and manufacturers buy our insect-based protein powder and oil in bulk and at wholesale quantities. So we sell formulated poultry feed out of the insect and also oil for small-scale farmers as a local climate-neutral alternative to imported animal feed products. So in 2021, we engaged over 10 potential outgrowers, and we aim to replicate our protein production operation with 5 of them as dedicated micropreneur outgrowers. Collectively, our outgrowers process approximately 2.5 tons of food waste per month. Our most recent projects within the organic composting sector explored conversion of post-harvest waste from commercial farmers into compost products for urban gardening. We successfully piloted this with UNDP Ghana, where we donated over 500 kilograms of compost to our household, to one household, one backyard farm projects. This is a local municipal level urban farming project. So overall, there is an immense potential for using edible insects in tackling Africa's protein demand. The second one is organic fertilizer demand and food security. However, we require strong industry collaboration and partnership to scale up. As such, we are currently looking for food waste suppliers and research institutions within Ghana to further grow and scale up the impact of edible insects in Africa's sustainable agricultural industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rose. Very interesting. So I encourage actually our audience to pose questions in the chat and commentaries, of course, input, contributions, and so on, because we will be having the presentations one after the other, and then come back to a bit of discussion. So without major delay, we go now to Fatou. Fatou, si vous êtes en ligne, Fatou Cissoko, qui est en Guinée actuellement. J'espère que la ligne est bonne parce qu'aujourd'hui, on a eu beaucoup de problèmes en fait. Voilà, très bien. Très bien, Fatoumata. Alors, Fatoumata est une jeune entrepreneuse qui appuie beaucoup l'autonomisation des femmes guinéennes et beaucoup la promotion locale aussi et la production locale. Elle est la fondatrice et la PDG de l'entreprise Fatou Kadidja qui commercialise la marque Jedengui que beaucoup d'entre vous connaissent. Elle va nous raconter un petit peu son modèle entrepreneurial. Elle a eu beaucoup de prix déjà. Vous aurez remarqué qu'aujourd'hui, on a beaucoup de jeunes entrepreneurs et donc, ce qui est très, très rassurant en fait pour un petit peu les combats à venir sur la réduction des pertes alimentaires, puisqu'ils sont déjà très conscients qu'il faut faire quelque chose. Donc, s'il vous plaît, Fatoumata, la parole est à vous.
Bonjour à tous, ravie de participer à ce panel. Je suis Fatou Titine Cissoko, je suis gérante et fondatrice de l'entreprise Fatou et Kadidja. Nous sommes spécialisés dans tout ce qui est gestion post-récolte, principalement le séchage des fruits. Alors, notre marque s'appelle Jedengui, ça s'appelle Jardin Jedengui de Guinée et le slogan, c'est la meilleure façon de consommer les fruits parce que nous avons beaucoup de fruits qui se perdent et nous, on se charge de les récupérer. Suivant. Alors, comme je vous l'ai dit, je suis fille d'entrepreneur agricole et en 2012, quand je suis venue pour gérer l'entreprise familiale, nous avons fait un constat. Nous avons beaucoup de produits après la récolte qui se perdent par manque de moyens de conservation et de transformation. Alors, en 2014, nous avons créé Fatou et Kadidja qui s'est spécialisé dans le séchage des fruits et la fabrication de jus de fruits. Nous avons, pour cela, n'ayant pas de formation de base dans la technologie de transformation, nous avons travaillé avec des structures comme l'Université de Californie Davis, USAID, Winrock International, le PPAO pour vulgariser des technologies de réduction des pertes post-récolte. Suivant. Alors, le modèle Fatou Kadidja.
Juste deux secondes, désolé de vous interrompre. Joseph, on vous entend sur le canal français. Merci de switcher, s'il vous plaît.
I just switched to the French English channel. Sorry, Fatou and Kadidja, as I said at the beginning, is specialized in transforming the losses after harvest. And we have a platform that we set up in Kindia, occupying a surface of 2 hectares with capacity of 5 tons, using the fruit of the area, pineapple, mango, and other fruit. We have 20 employees approximately, and we promoted mango, pineapple, dried and in the form of fruit juice. Next slide, please. Thank you. The vision of Fatou Kadidja using the losses after harvest is becoming the leader in the agro-business transformation of fruit. I remind you that 42% of the local production is lost as a waste, which represents approximately $15 million. And we want to offer the best transformed fruit in Guinea. As we know that the losses after the harvest are losses for the producer, our goal is to transform them and offer them to the consumer in a better form. We already developed the agro-business products locally in Guinea. We want to reduce the losses after the harvest and create jobs for young and women, because they're at the basis of this activity. We aim at valuing and promoting the agricultural products of Guinea, integrate and contribute women in development of the agribusiness sector in Guinea, and reduce the rural exodus by 10%, because the young are going to the cities because they don't find work in the rural areas, and we are wanting to fight this situation. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, no. To reach our goals, we set up a cooperation with producers, mainly women. We created cooperatives of women producers, and every time these women have a hard time finding a market for their product, we take up that excess, transform it, and put it on the market on our side. We also have a group of growers in the Federation of Guinea. We have 1,000 plus of these growers that can send their production to a platform for us to transform it. We also have a we also give consultancy services to the local producers and find markets to avoid everything that are losses after the harvest. Today, we have over 200 tons of pineapple that should be that are used by our processing unit. We have over 600 tons of mango that were purchased from the local producers, processed through our platform for juices and dried products. We have more than over 70 small producers that are giving us their products when they can't sell them themselves, and our forecast for 2023 is that more than 500 tons of pineapple and 1,000 tons of mango will be recovered by our processing plant. Next slide, please. Thank you. As for the marketing of the products that we recover from the growers, which were going to be wasted, we have 93% of our national market between hotels, boutiques, and the retail market. We have an international market between Senegal, Mali, and Morocco, and our prospects for 23-25 is to produce 5 to 10 tons of dried fruit and 25,000 liters of juices per year. We expect to export at least 40% of the dried fruit to Africa and Europe. What are our constraints? As losses are increasing, we have quite small production capacity to be able to answer to the demand of other producers. We also have problems at the quality control and the certification of our products. And I'm afraid we lost Fatou Mata. Do you still hear us, Mrs. Fatou Mata? Mohamed, have we lost Mrs. Fatou Mata? Yes. So, in the meantime, we will pass on to the next speaker.
Sorry, we had some connections today. The participants, the panelists have many challenges actually with connection. That shows really the problems in the field. Even when we want to do a very good work, you are faced with challenges of communication. So while Fatou Mata reconnects and shares the last part of her presentation, perhaps not to lose time, we get Amogelang. Amo, are you there? Are you with us?
Yes, yes.
Okay, co-founder of Viva Organica, and you are in Botswana. So let's hope that from Botswana the connection is better. So you will tell us more, but Viva Organica is a fertilizer manufacturing company in a sustainable agriculture space. And what you want is growing foods that are better for the environment, that have less pesticides and are a bit more contributing to the sustainable consumption patterns and the circular economy. So we listen to you, please. Go ahead.
Right, I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Yes, we see it now. Please go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
Cool. Thank you so much for that, Isolina. Now our internet service providers are under pressure to deliver today. So my name is Amo, as Isolina has already told you, and I'm from Viva Organica. I'm going to be presenting on fertilizer production using a variety of waste from around Botswana. And so I'd like to start by saying, farmers in Africa are plagued by a plethora of problems. One of them being the high cost of fertilizer, that is because of the fact that we import the majority of the stuff from outside, plus the ongoing conflict in Ukraine going on right now, which is increasing the cost of everything, like logistics, like generally the cost of producing goods and services is higher now. So additionally, the majority of the fertilizer that comes into the country is the synthetic chemical fertilizers, like your normal 232 NPK fertilizers that come in the form of granular powders, right? So as much as these fertilizers are very high in nutrition and so very precise, like if it says 232, it means like 2 nitrogen exactly, and all that. So as much as it's good in nutrition, it has a very fatal flaw. It lacks beneficial microbial life. So what do you need microbial life for? You need it to convert the raw nutrients in the soil and your fertilizer itself into more bioavailable forms that can be used by your plants, right? So it's kind of like when you digest stuff, like when you eat a banana, you can't just inject it into your bloodstream, as fun as that would be. You need to eat it. It needs to go through your digestive tract and convert it into a form that can be used by your body. So a similar system is employed by soil, by use of these microbes next to your roots, right? So because of all these problems, you have a situation like, because of cost and the fact that the majority of the fertilizer, the chemical fertilizers, are not being used actually, like only 40%, a reported 40% of chemical fertilizers are not used actually by plants when applied in soils, right? So because of all this, you have a situation where our plants in our fields lack immunity to fight against pests and diseases, which then creates another problem where farmers need to use pesticides, which is an additional cost and is also harmful to them if not used correctly, and the environment and the end consumer. So I'd like to move on to also like the beef industry in Botswana and Africa in general, and how we can sort of take advantage of another situation that is going on there to create a solution for the horticulture industry. So Botswana, as you know, is a net exporter of beef. We have like 2.5 million cows. We have more cows than people here, right? That's the joke that we suffer from. So anyway, the majority of these cows, though, are not like your productive cows. It's like someone's uncle's cow somewhere. It's not doing much. They don't even know where it is. So what I'm mostly interested in is the stock that is intended for the EU and South African market. So this is like 220,000 herd, and it's largely situated in feedlots. So we have a pretty good idea of the exact numbers and the amount of waste these cows produce. So each cow produces about 30 kilograms of waste per day. The majority of that is just water water waste, like your urine and your perspiration as the cow sweats. But we're more interested in the solid biomass, which is about 9 kg per cow per day. That amounts to like 3 tons of waste per cow per year, which is a lot, right? Additionally, we also have waste that is produced from the retailers, like your Pick and Pay, your general fruit and veggie stores locally, and also your restaurants and stuff that generate a lot of waste. We all know that when a customer looks at a tomato at the store there and it's just a bit off, to them it's rotten. So that forces the retailer to throw it out, you know. So that's all the waste that is created by our industries currently at the moment. So one begs to ask the question, where does all this waste go at the moment, right? Well, in the case of a feedlot, the feedlot operator typically buys the yard next door and just dumps all the waste there and forgets about it. And it keeps accumulating through years and years and years with nothing being done for it. And then in the case of your veggie retailer, it's just dumped in a skip somewhere, and then it's sent to the landfill to also accumulate. So at Viva Organica, we saw this huge problem as a huge solution, as a huge opportunity, for us to generate some value for the horticulture industry. We use the waste to manufacture biofertilizers. So our intention is to support smallholder farmers and commercial farmers in their quest to produce nutrient-dense organic foods for the respective communities. So we have 2 products. I'm just going to cover this quick. I'm not sure how much time I have left. We have 2 products. We have a granular fertilizer that is rich in both nutrients and the microbial content that I was talking about just now. So you buy this stuff and then you use the majority of the stuff. We also have a liquid fertilizer that you can use as a soil drench or as a foliar feed on your leaves. So yeah, the past 2 years we've been working with customers from just a small grower at home with a small patch of tomatoes for their family to a large operation in hectares of land with great success. You know, this is we've been humbled to receive all this feedback from them. These are like actual pictures from our food growers around the country. And of course, we're looking to expand at some point into other territories, you know. So I'd like to go back to the previous problem statement that I was giving you, just to reiterate. So we have industries like the beef industry and the retail industry that are creating massive value for all parties, for their communities, right? So one problem with them is they generate a lot of waste, and the communities also generate a lot of waste themselves, you know. So we're talking about like your home, like your household waste when you eat food and you throw it out. That food could be going to a better use. But at the moment, all the waste that is being generated, it just goes to a landfill somewhere with no plan. So we at Viva Organica saw this, as I was saying, and what we do is we take the waste, the organic waste, we feed it through our composting facility. That composting facility, from there we create premium organic fertilizer, sell it to food growers across the country. These food growers then feed their community with nice produce, and then these communities create waste. The waste is then sent to our composting facility, and so on and so forth. So now we have a cycle instead of the linear kind of pattern of consumption that I described earlier on, which is what's happening now. So less food is going to the landfills, which means less emissions, like less methane going into the atmosphere, less leachate going into the water tables. There's also other benefits, like if you have more food growers in respective communities spread across the country, then it means less logistics. Food needs to travel less distances, which is less emissions, and it's just convenient, you know. So I'd like to take you to like our composting facility. This is a snapshot of part of it. This is where the waste was coming in. So we remember I told you about how much one cow produces, how much waste one cow produces per year per annum. By the way, our composting facility has a capacity of 24 ton per annum. One cow produces 3 ton per annum. So that means we're working with 8 cows, sorry. Our whole business is just taking care of the waste of just 8 cows. So I'm saying this to share the massive opportunity that is out there for everyone that could look to get involved in this sort of business or any other business, you know, that is related to it loosely. It's just massive for Africa. It could really take people out of poverty in the next 10, 5 years. I don't know. So I don't work alone. I have an awesome team. We're a duo, a nice duo. I have Musinguzi, my partner. She's a biological sciences superstar. She takes care of our operations, planning and all. And I'm Amo, obviously. I do the branding, the marketing, talking too much like I'm doing right now. And I can't end this discussion without, this presentation without mentioning our stakeholders, like your AfriLabs, your African Development Bank, who just, by the way, offered us $100,000 to expand our business, you know, to reach more capacity and more territories. So I'm happy about that. We also have the university, the local university in Botswana, for instance. Shout out to them. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I didn't exceed my time. And I hope I gave you massive value, and hope you had fun. Thank you. Over to you.
Very much, Amo, for the very good presentation, and indeed a very good example from Botswana, who is one of the biggest exporters actually and producers of livestock. So we'll get back to you, especially also on the finance. I'm glad that I know some of the programs of the African Development Bank that support young entrepreneurs, you know, into that part of circular economy. So we'll get back how difficult it is to get sometimes that finance part. Now we get back. I have been told by Mohamed that Rose is back. Fatou is back from Guinea because we lost her just at the end of her presentation. Est-ce que vous êtes là, Fatou? Est-ce que vous nous entendez?
Oui, je suis là. Désolée.
Fatou is back.
Bon, alors, c'est pas de votre faute du tout. Merci.
It's not your fault, and thank you very much for having Fatou to be back with us. We're going to start again from where we left. You were talking about the marketing, so if you could please finish your presentation. And for those who joined us in the meanwhile, we are talking about the processing activity that is a sector that might reduce the post-harvest waste and losses through the processing of fruit and vegetables. It's a very important dimension of the question. I was talking about the constraints, the weak production capacity, the quality control, but I'm afraid we
losing Fatou again. The quality control and the certification of products in order to be able to export dried fruit, the access to quality packaging for an affordable price. We indeed export most of our products, and we are lacking financial support from financial institutions. Next slide, please.
Alors, déjà pour cette activité qui n'est pas très facile.
So this activity is not that easy to carry out, but is nevertheless extending in Guinea. So we are grateful for producers who understand that they have to improve their income and reduce post-harvest loss. We are very satisfied by the way we're working. We have set objectives at the beginning of our activity. When we started working, we decided that by 2025, we wanted to decrease by 20 to 30% the losses incurred by farmers. We are happy to have made breakthrough, and despite Ebola crisis, the 2019 pandemic, we managed to keep our direction thanks to our strength and the people who are working with us. And we are also working with technical partners who help us improve the fruit preservation techniques. We are developing management tools, and we also participate in the training of our teams. We take part in fairs, exhibits to display the work we are doing on a daily basis. And we are also currently trying to develop a market share for processing products. Most processed products have been imported, and we, as young Africans, we try to gain a market share in order to be able to value the agricultural production and mostly the perishable food products. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for your attention, and I'm of course available if you have questions to ask. Thank you very much, Fatou. We'll come back on the questions and answers later on. We have another two presentations first. We
with two more entrepreneurs, Mark Musinguzi and then Jedengui. I believe he has joined us in the meantime from Ghana. So Mark Musinguzi from Bioplastics in Uganda, very passionate as well on contributing to recycle, reduce waste. He founded a multi-award project which is called Wet Technique that looked actually at treating and recycling wastewater. He will tell us a bit more about that. And he co-founded as well Bioplastics, which is also a research project focused on converting water hyacinth into an invasive, of course, aquatic plant into biodegradable packaging. So please, Mark, if you are online, I hope, yes, your presentation is there. Go, have 10 minutes. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, so I'm going to turn off my video because of the bandwidth. But in a nutshell, my name is Musinguzi Mark. I'm the team lead of Bioplastics. We're a startup from Uganda that makes biodegradable food packaging. Next slide. So we come from Africa, continent of about 1.2 billion people. And I specifically, next slide, come from Uganda, which is facing a big problem of agricultural waste. So Uganda is one of the top 10 producers of banana. And 75% of all these farmers across the country at least engaged in banana growing. And most of these are smallholder farmers. We have about 1.8 million hectares of total cultivated banana across the country. But about 30 tons of waste is generated per acre of banana grown per season. So if you're familiar with banana growing, you have the stem that remains in the garden after you have done collecting the fruit. So that is the part that we are trying to upcycle and give money to these farmers to sell to us and add an additional revenue stream. So another challenge which we're faced with across Africa is plastic pollution, with very low recycling rates, which on average across the continent are 3%. Across most major cities, we have sites like this, and our landfills cannot cope with the rapid population growth. Next slide. So our solution, or a solution that has been proposed to this across the globe, is biodegradable packaging. So this is packaging that's just like plastic, but made from agricultural waste streams. And after using it, you can throw it and it can compost or turn into manure. So these have been fronted as solutions, but sadly, they're about 40 to 50% more expensive than plastic. And why is this so? Because all this packaging that's biodegradable is being imported onto the continent from China especially. So you find the cost of this packaging for most restaurants, most supermarkets that want to change to sustainable biodegradable alternatives, they have to pay about double, which is just not financially possible. So our solution to this and what we have created is compostable food packaging. Next slide. And we have developed this using our novel start baking manufacturing process. We developed this technology in collaboration with the United States Department of Agriculture. And over the last 3 years, we've been engaged in research and development to be able to make this product as cost effective and as cost competitive to current plastic on the market, while also upcycling the agricultural waste that's left on these farms. So our current product line includes the disposable party plates and fruit and vegetable trays. Next slide, which you can see here. So we sell this to grocery stores, and just in a nutshell about our production process of how we make this packaging. We use different types of starch inputs. We have used cassava, potato, wheat starch as well. And for the plant fiber, which is our main component, we have worked with sugarcane bagasse, which remains on sugarcane plantations after they have squeezed out the juice, the banana pseudostem, and also wheat bran. And our products are 100% home compostable, meaning that you can throw it in your compost pit, and in 60 days, it has turned into manure. Next slide. So this is just some of the products. So we sell this to grocery stores. They use this to pack fruits, vegetables, and they're directly replacing the styrofoam tray or plastic tray. And what's interesting and why they are taking on our product is because we have found a way to make it cost competitive with plastic. Next slide. Sorry, next. Yes, so just in East Africa, where we are based, this is a $500 million market opportunity. We're looking at taking out all the styrofoam that's currently being used. And most countries in East Africa, such as Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya, have already enacted partial bans on plastic packaging. But these bans are hard to implement because there are no cost competitive alternatives, which is how we come in. And we're looking to expand into the fruit export sector with global plastic bans being used. We are looking to incorporate our packaging in export streams. Next slide. Yes, so we use, for these trays that we're using, we use cassava starch, the banana stem. This is the middle part of the stem that remains in the garden. We buy it from farmers for about $1 to $2 per stem. So this depends on the size of the stem. And we convert this into our packaging that we sell at about $6 cents per piece, 6 to 5 cents per piece, which is the same price as the styrofoam or plastic that's being sold here. Next slide. And how we've been able to achieve this is because of our short supply chain. So we are sourcing the waste, the agricultural waste close to our manufacturing facilities. And what we are selling is the technology. So we have small units which can be containerized or fit in a container. And these go for about $150,000 per piece per container unit. And you can use different types of fiber and starch input. making our technology easy to implement in different geographical regions and easily upcycle the waste streams into high-value products like the ones we're making. Next one. Yes, so the impact, we have been able to provide an additional source of income for farmers as they can now sell their stems to us at about $1 to $2 per stem. And also by providing a cost-competitive replacement for styrofoam, more and more companies here in Uganda are beginning to make the switch. And we, because of the short supply chain, so we're sourcing waste materials from the nearby communities. We're able to create new jobs that did not exist before. And this is the value we are living in the community. Next slide. Yes, so how we are linked to smallholder farmers, first of all, is through the purchase of the discarded used pseudo stems that are left in the farms, and also an additional revenue stream. Next slide. Yes, so what next for us? We currently sell about 500 of these trays per day after our research and development phase for 2 years. And in January, we have already installed capacity to make 7,000, 10,000 of these products per day. And we shall have the plant running in January this year. So we shall be selling 7,000 of these products in the Ugandan market. Next slide. So basically where we're presenting is to share the work we're doing to reach out to people who'd like to pilot our manufacturing technology in your geographical location. As I've said, you can work with sugarcane bagasse, you can work with banana stems. So these make up most of the agricultural waste streams across the continent. So we're looking for people who are willing to pilot our technology and also start selling these biodegradable packaging in their geographical region. Market partnerships as well. So as I said, we are expanding into the fruit export sector, but we are still trying to figure out around the regulation around this. So this is going to take about 6 months on our end, but we're looking to add people who are exporting vegetables, especially to Europe, where you now have a plastic ban that has been implemented just in June this year. And also co-application for grant opportunities that can help us pilot this technology that was developed in a new geographical region. So once again, I thank you so much for your kind attention. The team is comprised of me. I was a research assistant at the USDA Bioproduct Lab in California for about 6 months, where we scaled and developed our technology. And I'm with a team of brilliant mechanical engineers, as well as civil engineers and marketers who have helped take this technology from pilot scale into the market. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mark. Very, very interesting presentation. And I'm sure you will have plenty of questions already. Keep an eye, all of you, on the chat for some also bilateral questions. Also, we will come back in the question answer part. I think Mohamed, tell me if otherwise, but I think we have lost from Ghana. So waiting, he comes back with a very unstable connection. Perhaps we can go to Andrew. We have two colleagues from a bit the ecosystem. I mean, supporting, of course, themselves, business people, but supporting the entrepreneurs on different capacities. One, African Circular Economy Network, and the other one, Chowberry. So Andrew, perhaps if you can give us some insights on the work of the African Circular Economy Network that goes beyond agriculture, but you handle the parts on agriculture, and a bit what you do, that would be very interesting. And I thank you as joining us, because I know you were, you and your colleagues were very busy with many other conferences right now. Thank you very much. I also removed my my camera sometimes just to not to yes, make it worse than we have. Andrew, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, Isolina. And yes, we have been quite busy because we're busy preparing for the World Circular Economy Forum happening in Rwanda next week. So exciting times, and good to have that event on the continent finally. So yes, thank you, Isolina, for the introduction. So my name is Andrew McNaught, and I am a member of the African Circular Economy Network. I also run a consulting company called Tandem. And basically what we do at Tandem is we support organizations in their transition to being more circular. So organizations can be anything from a large corporate. So we do quite a lot of work with large companies that are looking to change the way that they do things to be more sustainable, more circular. However, we also work with smaller companies and even startups. So again, we've worked with quite a few companies that are just getting into the space to help them design their business from the beginning to be much more circular. So what does it mean to be circular? Well, we had a very nice example of this looking at it from the organic waste space, where, for example, we had that example of cattle manure, where previously it was just taken to landfill. Now someone has developed that into a product that's then re-entering the food system. So basically, the circular economy is a new way of doing things where at least we recycle raw materials and use them again for something else. But actually, even more valuable practices can fit into that. So things like remanufacturing, repairing products, and making new spare parts so that they can be used to fix products, so those can then go back into circulation. If something is already working, it can be redistributed to someone else who wants to use it. And again, the life cycle of products can be extended. So lots of exciting things that can happen in the circular economy space. But how does that relate to agriculture? So we follow, obviously, the circular economy framework, and a lot of people know the classic 3 Rs, the reduce, reuse, recycle. Actually, there's a whole lot more that can be done. And again, because my time is a bit limited, I won't go into the detail on this specific slide, but just to show that there's a lot of interesting approaches that you can apply to your process to essentially make it more sustainable and more circular. So talking about circularity in the food systems, essentially what we're trying to do is to keep the materials and resources in use for as long as possible, but also to substitute some of the let's say, unsustainable inputs that we're using in this food system with other sources. So, for example, the first area that we can focus on when it comes to circularity in a food system is to look at locally grown food that's grown through regenerative practices. Once that food has been produced, we can look at how that's processed and distributed to markets, again, in better ways, obviously looking at sort of healthier food as well. And again, a lot of the examples today, we're looking at the end-of-life applications of that. So how do we turn food waste into something more valuable? How do we make the most of it? And for the purpose of today, I'm essentially going to summarize these 3 points into regenerative production, so producing food in a regenerative way, circular processing and distribution, and then also valorification of waste. So basically turning food waste into something valuable. So we've already had some examples of things like organic inputs. So here in Zambia, and again, I should have maybe said this in the beginning, but our company is based in Zambia, headquartered in Lusaka, but we do work all over the continent. And here are some examples of local cases we have of organizations that are supporting the shift towards more regenerative production. So we had some examples early on the call where organic fertilizers or organic inputs for farming were being produced. And there's actually, we have a case here, a company called Albeda, where they've produced a fertilizer that's a mix of animal byproducts, agricultural residues, and other inputs. And this fertilizer gives a very similar performance to chemical fertilizers, so it performs just as well, but is currently half the price on the market. So again, some really exciting things there where farmers are able to choose a similar product, but one that's much more sustainable. We also have organizations like Kamako, who are encouraging farmers to use methods like crop rotation, agroforestry, a lot of other interesting approaches to grow their food more sustainably, and actually are then able to look at interesting things like carbon offset and therefore carbon credits that can go to the farmers to support them in what they're doing in their livelihoods. Another local organization called the Conservation Farming Unit that also operates across the region is doing a lot in the same area, but also promoting biodiversity. So, approaches like minimal tillage, improving soil health through things like cover cropping, and all these sorts of aspects. So again, we see a lot of interesting things happening in the regenerative production of food, and quite exciting times where we're seeing essentially a shift from chemical inputs, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and so on, to much more natural alternatives that can promote more regenerative practices. Then once we have produced the product, we're also seeing a lot of innovation in that space when it comes to processing the food and to distribution. So for example, there's a company here in Zambia called Trinity that has a product called Super Beans. And what they're doing is, firstly encouraging more farmers to grow beans, which are nutritious and provide an alternative source of income from the standard sort of staples or commodity crops that farmers are growing here, but also they process those much closer to the farmers. And what they're doing is pre-cooking them so that when they are cooked, it's very quick and requires less energy. So this also has lots of other added benefits like charcoal reduction and so on. We're also seeing some innovations in the supply chain. So for example, here, and this actually isn't a Zambia business, this has been stolen from Nigeria, but there's a company that is essentially doing solar-powered cold storage to improve supply chain for products that that essentially are perishable. We did have an example of this earlier on the call as well, where there was a company that was doing drying of food to extend the shelf life. So again, really great examples of that in terms of the processing to extend shelf life and reduce losses along the entire supply chain. And again, some really interesting innovations. This is an app that I stole from France, one that's called Too Good To Go. And it's taken off quite successfully over there. And again, something that we feel would do really well on the continent here. And basically is a platform that can connect consumers to restaurants, supermarkets, markets, where there's food that is still good to consume, but is close to expiring, and basically make that connection so that people can purchase food or produce at discounted prices, and much more locally. Finally, we had quite a few examples of this, and good to see black soldier fly taking off in other parts of the continent as well. We also have a company here in Zambia called Ekponimo Farms that is producing animal feed from organic waste using black soldier fly. But again, lots of interesting things happening in terms of waste to energy, where again, companies are able to turn that organic matter through anaerobic digestion into biogas that can be used for cooking. And again, also fertilizers, liquid fertilizers, and similar composting and vermicompost operations for that. So yeah, essentially I wanted to touch on today a few of the sort of practical examples on areas where we can make the entire food system much more circular. Again, very interesting to see how many people are making value out of waste. Would be good to see a lot more innovations around sort of the production of food and also the processing and distribution, how we can get the products to the consumer while minimizing the wastage. So, and also some interesting packaging innovations that we saw on the market today. So if anyone would like to discuss about this any more, or find out how you and your own company can transition to being more circular and more sustainable, please do get in touch with us. Our contact details are here. And I think I've probably exhausted my time, so I'll stop it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Very much appreciated. There was one question that could be of interest to everybody. Do you know a bit more about the World Circular Economy Conference you mentioned that is going to happen next week in Rwanda? And perhaps 2 words, if it's of interest to our audience, on the African Circular Economy Network, where you lead the agriculture part. Thank you.
Yes, sure, no problem. So the World Circular Economy Forum event is happening in Rwanda next week over 2 days. So that's the 6th and the 7th of December. There's a lot of exciting events happening around that. Unfortunately, it is by invite only, so it's not open to the public to travel there and attend the forum. However, if you look on the website, so it's if you look on the Citro website, because they're one of the main sort of organizers and drivers of the event, along with other partners like Africa Circular Economy Network. So have a look online, find the Citro website and look for the WCEF, World Circular Economy Forum. And for example, in Zambia, there are some studio events, so side events that are happening at the same time. A lot of these events will be streamed live. So again, if you can't manage to travel or attend these events in your city, please feel free to join them online. And we're really excited about it because firstly, it's the first time that it's happening on the continent. And we feel that Africa is ripe for innovation, again, as we've seen today with all these amazing startup ideas. And if we can get the model right in the beginning, we can have a much more sustainable ecosystem with this. So firstly, very excited about that. Also, some of the topics that are going to be discussed, agriculture is one of the key ones. There's also topics around financing the circular economy, sort of circular economy in cities, and other sort of topics that are important to us. But yeah, please do have a look at that. There'll be, I'm sure, a lot of interesting things to learn, a lot of interesting connections to be made. So yeah, maybe what I can do is drop in the chat the link to the website so that you can go and see what events are happening close to you or online.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm sure that people will contact you as well for the African Circular Economy Network and many of the work you are doing. Very pleased as well to see, yes, all the startups and entrepreneurships that are now very, very dynamic in Africa. Very, very happy to see that in different fronts, actually. Today, we are a bit more on the part post-harvest and so on, less than on the consumer one, but we will deal on next editions on the different parts. So now I let me Mohamed if Gideon comes back at some point because he's struggling with internet. If not, Oscar Ekponimo, who is the founder of Chowberry in Nigeria. Thank you very much as well. I know it has been very difficult for you today. You will tell us about the app that you have developed that aggregates food waste data and connects, those who eventually need it as to minimize losses. Thank you, Oscar. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Isolina, for that kind introduction. Hello, everyone. I've learned so much already with the wonderful presentations. I've just been soaking it up. It's been a pleasure listening. I will just pause my video so that you can have a clear presentation because of the bandwidth challenges. Chowberry Village to launch this organization from our
it's a bit difficult, actually. I think we are losing you. Mohamed, today is really something, I have to say. Oscar, can you hear us? I think we lost you.
Yeah, we lost him.
We lost him. Okay. So while he comes back,
experiences here in Nigeria.
We lost you a bit, Oscar. We lost you a bit, huh? Be aware. No. Oscar, we will have to get you a bit later because we can't hear you. We hear very little sentences. So what we can do, and thank you, Andrew. You have all the World Circular Economy Forum website as well, if you are of interest. While we get back, because we can't.
Hello, I'm back. I can.
Okay, so please, we lost. Yes, because we lost you almost completely. So you should almost restart from the start. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So I was saying Chowberry is an organization that leverages technology and innovation through an app to reduce food waste. So how that works is we created this app in our version 1.0 that took and aggregated data from supermarkets and shops that are approaching end of shelf life. So you could have dry stock, all kinds of foods in supermarket and retailers. And we were able to connect NGOs who are in the field using this app. They could gather all kinds of food and use them for their feeding program, of course, at deeply discounted prices. So in the last 6 years, we've facilitated the distribution of 1.6 million meals to food insecure persons. Next slide, please. In addition to this number of people we've reached, we know in Nigeria there has been a lot of insurgents in the northeast of the country because of the Boko Haram terrorists, and there are a lot of internally displaced people. So we were able to use our service to provide access to quality food to this category of people who are vulnerable and facing hunger through our work with partnering NGOs. So we had version 1 of the app, and like I mentioned earlier on, we gave it to the retailers. The retailers would simply just upload all of that data on items approaching the end of shelf life, and then NGOs would also access that same data, as well as consumers, and they can buy them at very deeply discounted prices. And the innovation we had there was that the items would become even more discounted as it approaches the end of shelf life. Next slide. Okay, so the revenue model for version 1 was markups on discounted items and also distribution fees for shipping it out, and as well as additional commission per transactions, since it's a technology service we are providing. But the challenge is with version 1, and we've been around for a bit, and we noticed that when you come to circular economy innovations like this, it's really, really difficult to scale, especially with dependence on grants, working with INGOs. I can't off the top of my head know any circular economy organization within Africa that has scaled or has reached valuation up to $1 billion. And this is a challenge that I hope we'll get to discuss and brainstorm about, which is why we changed our model to focus really, really on business. And that's what you'd see on the next slide, I believe. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is our impact stories. We reduced over 30 tons of food from the retailers and supermarkets. We worked with over 20,000 registered users on our version 1 and over 15 plus nonprofits across the country who worked with us as our distribution partners. Next slide. Okay, so typically, this is how we deliver our impact. We work with the NGOs, and sometimes they package it with our branded packs like this. And then we've been able to distribute 1.6 million meals to families facing hunger, internally displaced people, all from food that is approaching the end of shelf life or at risk of waste within the ecosystem, because we believe there is a strong linkage between food waste, food loss, and hunger. And Africa's population right now is 1.2 billion people and is projected to rise to over 2.5 billion in 2050. So our goal is primarily to reorder the ecosystem, the food system, in a way that you have a more sustainable distribution of resources, a more balanced and sustainable ecosystem overall. Because right now the system is very splintered. You have farmers, for example, who create value at the farming level, but then they sell it out to big corporations. Most of them are not even based in Africa, and those foods are resold to these populations at a high premium. So one of the things we're also working on is to see how we can reorder this food system to have localized value addition centers, but that's something we can talk about later on. So next slide, please. So working with version 1, we realized that the food waste happened even higher up the chain from, farm FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods, the bigger manufacturers, and also farmers and producers of food. So we realized that we can go higher up the chain and create a more deeper level business that solves a real problem, which is what our version 2 is morphing into or pivoting into. Next slide. Next, please. So our version 2 is a matching service, primarily a direct-to-consumer service. We realize that the supply chain is very splintered, and that's why we are facing a lot of waste, either from the food producers or also the food manufacturers. So we've created this matching system that can match, for example, a restaurant who wants to restock on its food produce, whether it's fishes, pasta, eggs, whatsoever, with a producer of that kind of food. And that cuts out the middlemen, that increases this time lag. And we all know in the continent that we live in, logistics is a problem. And this is why we decided to go this route. No matter how we try to be, provide sustainable farming systems and all whatnot, the logistics will take a long time, another probably 50, 60 years of real development, our roads, our rail, and all kinds of things. So we've decided to go with this matching service to improve the efficiency in the supply chain by matching food producers directly to the food consumers. So therefore, we're able to create a B2B business and also a B2C where households can order directly.
Oscar, we lost you. Oscar, can you hear us? If not, we lost him, Mohamed.
Oui, je confirme, Isolina.
Il n'est pas, OK, so we try to get him back. And Gideon has not logged in, right? No, I don't see him either. Okay, so what we are going to do is perhaps I've asked you to try to put your comments or questions or, contributions. There are already many. Actually, some are a bit bilateral, so I will leave the panelists to answer them. We have some actually which are a bit for all of you, which are how do we make these startups, these enterprises, these businesses more sustainable without the need of external funds? I mean, and making them, of course, financially more viable, because there is a problem on really investment for upscaling those technologies and not just, at the very primary part of development. So if I will give you the floor to each of you to tell a bit what has been your struggle there and how do you see this could be fixed. Of course, there is no single solution, I mean, but how this could do. Then there are a few questions as well on the fact that where do we find your products, especially, for example, the bioplastic, I mean, the innovations, do you sell them somewhere apart in your country where people in this audience could access them? And also, is there any part of a transfer of technology? Could these people learn from you or have access to your technology to develop them in their respective African countries? There is some questions on the valorization of the waste and about what is the business model, what is the price that is sold. I mean, is it a viable business? I mean, Fatou, you have a few on the way you process them, in the way you make money, how much is it sold? I mean, basically, it's more the business model, if it's something that is to be encouraged with others, and what is a bit the timeline. So perhaps we could go there. Rose, could I give you the floor to tell us a bit more based on what you have heard on the finance part, on the viability of the business, on what would be needed to accelerate those efforts that we all want, of course, on reducing losses and waste. And then I go to Fatou, Amo, and Mark. Rose, are you ready? So if not, we go to Fatou. Fatou, vous m'entendez?
Alors déjà, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the questions. To make sure this activity is sustainable, startups need a financial support that is absolutely necessary because the losses incurred by producers have to be to a certain extent compensated for, and producers are expecting to be paid for what they are losing. We don't want to make them lose more, and all what we get from them should be processed, and we should to a certain extent compensate for their losses. And beyond the social aspects of our activity, in order to help producers not to help them not to lose, we have to market those products, and that's what we are living from. But processed products require more time to get on the market because of the competition exerted by processed products that are imported. We therefore need a certain financial balance to go on helping producers to compensate for their losses. There was also a question about the sustainability of the activities. There is still much to do in Africa and in Guinea because there is a certain psychosis linked to local processed products, even though the production or the activity is sustainable. Farm products are not preserved and will go on deteriorating. In order to avoid deteriorating, we have to process them, and technologies are quite easy to use. They are powered by solar energy. We can also import facilities such as drying equipment or equipment used for the production of fruit juice. And that's all of what I had to say.
Now?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, please. So I don't know if you heard a bit the questions and you read a bit the chat, but basically the finance is a big part, the sustainability of the system in terms of finance. There were some bilateral for you on the price, on upscaling strategies and innovations. And could you tell us, and anything, of course, you want more on the basis of what you have heard from your presentation onwards?
All right. So concerning finance, as startups and also, in the, handling, I say, circular economy, waste, and all, when you are approaching the banks, it's very difficult to get funding. As immediately you approach them, what they see is risk, because how would they get the money they are giving you? How would they be able to get it back? So that's basically what as a startup and also working as a waste processing company we face. But notwithstanding, there are a lot of organizations that offer grants. Yes, and also as they offer grants to help these startups, it's somehow difficult to, it's difficult to get hold of these grants because, there is one particular grant that we won this year. That's the Youth Adaptation Challenge. A lot of people applied, but a few were selected. So, you know, looking at this challenge is, you know, I always say it will be great that, you know, in terms of capacity building, it will be, there will be a platform for capacity building so that you wouldn't wait to enter into a startup or an accelerator before you get a hold of improving your aspects of your operations. Yes, so yeah, that's a little that I can say.
Yeah, so what you are saying is not enough platforms to share capacity building models, including, of course, the financial one to get it to scale before entering accelerators, is what you mean. That's one way of preparing better to access funding.
Exactly.
Yes, which is quite rare. It's true. It's not a lot of funding around because we talk about grants or support. We don't talk about loans. I would say loans is even more difficult for startups, eventually, you know, obviously, because it is a too low ticket for most of the financial and not enough, of course, financial credentials. I think we are, thank you actually to the colleagues from CIRAD as well for sharing in the chat models. They have a lot, and I see also FAO colleagues who are doing a lot on the circular economy. But we have quickly Oscar back. So if you can just finish your presentation. We lost you in the B2C. Thank you for your attempts. I know it's a very difficult day for you. Please, Oscar.
Sincere apologies for the connectivity issues. So I'll just speed through in 2 or 3 minutes. So I was saying that piggybacking on what you've just talked about, the challenges with scaling, our experience has shown that grants and working with INGOs, they are nice and good to get things going. But if we really want to scale some of these businesses into very, very high potential enterprises, then it is important that finding out what the right models are that can really generate the right kind of revenue and profitability is very important. And I was saying that we've pivoted into a B2B, B2C food matching model where we match producers with suppliers, not only just food that is about to be wasted or at risk of wasted or at, within the ecosystem that can be lost, but also with high value, high nutritious food. That way we're able to generate revenue and scale our impact. So next slide would elaborate a lot more. So working with FMCGs and farm producers at risk of spoilage would create this matching system, B2B, B2C, and I'll just go through a typical user journey of how that works. Let's say a hotel chain wants to restock on its fish and its pasta, on its yams, on its beans. Instead of going to the middlemen in the markets, they can, order direct, and this is like a direct to consumer kind of model. And within that, they can also access our aggregated data on food that is about to get spoiled or food that is reaching its end of shelf life. And we can also get this at discounts for them. That way we cut down the lead time for food to be consumed. Next slide, please. So these are just the features of this new model. We have a mobile wallet, automated discount sales algorithm, cash transfer for food vouchers. And these are all technical details I wouldn't want to bore you with. Next slide would elaborate how it actually works. So we have 2 apps or 2 services going into one. So we have a merchant app and a consumer app. The merchant app would have most of this producers, food merchants, and then the consumer app has restaurants and also regular people who can access discounted food. So this is still currently being tested. We haven't rolled out this new model yet, in case someone is curious, but we're actively working on this and it should be out pretty soon. So next slide, please. So I was just explaining the model, like I said, revenue and transactions between B2B and B2C. paid recommendations, markup on discounted food, markup on delivery costs. We believe in finding the right model, like I mentioned, is very key to scale. There are businesses who scale without grants. So we need to figure out how can we replicate real businesses in the circular economy, circular economy circuit or industry, so to speak, and scale our businesses the way they're supposed to and increase the impact. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's about it. We've had all this recognition, and my contact is on the next slide, and you can read some more information about what we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oscar. Very interesting, very useful. So in the interest of time, let's continue a bit to get our feedback where we started. If you are online, Amo as well, from what you have heard, from the questions on the chat, from the finance part, there are standardization parts, upscaling one. What would you have to add from your side?
I'm not gonna lie, it's very difficult to do anything without finance. I think that was the exact question, like how can we do these sustainable businesses without necessarily having the finance. You need the money to actually build the infrastructure. But the nice thing about circular economies, though, like the kind of models that we're trying to build here, that we're talking about, is they rely upon the input is waste majority of the time. And as you know, waste is abundant. So if that is your main input, like the challenge is kind of like trying to figure out where waste is being produced and what you can do with that waste, and a particular market that has a problem that you can solve using that product. And then it's kind of like the stars need to be aligned for you to get that all going. We've already mentioned grants. There are some grants out there that are coming up, although they're few and far between. But there's things you can. I've already mentioned, by the way, AfriLabs. I'll put the link in the chat there somewhere. AfriLabs, African Development Bank. They have a fund that they're going to be dispersing a lot of capital to Africa for projects like this, you know. So that's another opportunity. I guess that's maybe more practical advice that I can give someone that is looking to get into this space. The way we started our business, we just bootstrapped, you know. Bootstrapped as in just using our own finances, using waste material. We literally, our first worm bins, we use composting worms a lot in our production, by the way. So our first composting bins were literally cupboards, old cupboards from the house. We dismantled everything and then made boxes out of them. So that was like kind of like upcycling, and then made the first batches of product. So it's only recently, like the past 2 years, the way we got to expand to something more larger for companies to use our products for the market. Sorry. So yeah, I hope that helps. I'll definitely put the AfriLabs link in the chat there, so anyone who's interested can get into it. And I'm certain, what's his name again? Was it Andrew from Zambia? Might have a much better idea as to how we can scale our businesses and start up, you know. So I'm eager to hear something from him. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Amo. Very useful. On you and the ones to come, there is something we heard a bit less, which I thought it was quite critical, is the policy part. What is the support from the governments? You know, I mean, it's not only finance, but is it incentives, be financial or in other forms from the government, and also the links with the research, if you have struggled to do that, or because any innovation, of course, as a part of research as well. I don't know, Amo, if you want. If not, I will go to Mark. Amo, you want to add something on this?
Yes. So the way our business started, when we first started, luckily in the case of Botswana, I don't know about other places in Africa. We have a Ministry of Agriculture research department. So it is literally their job all day to just find different opportunities that farmers can use to take advantage of in creation of value for their markets, right? So we got our very first batch of worms from the Agriculture Research Department to just start up and get to know the process and experiment and fail and then try again. So it's not just like the worms, they also provide a lot of data for us to like figure out exactly which kind of waste produces which kind of fertilizer, which waste is much better than the other, so ignore this one. There's spreadsheets and all that. So that's a very brilliant question, by the way. So it's not just about the capital, you know, there's also like other forms of support that you might look for in your respective government or NGOs and stuff that you can take advantage of. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Amo. And then I give the floor to Mark. Mark, also you have questions on where to find your products, and please go ahead. And I encourage because we have not very much time left. If you have more questions, we don't open the floor with the participants because there are too many people and then it gets complicated, but please use the chat for whatever you want to communicate us or to ask the speakers. Mark?
We have lost him again.
Okay, so the time Mark comes back. Andrew, you have heard, of course, all the... You're here, Andrew?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, because today is... from what... Yeah, it's terrible. From what you have heard, and, you know, is there something else you want to, you know, to add on what can help our entrepreneurs to kind of make a viable business, sustainable, access not only to finance, but, you know, to other support needed to upscale that?
Yes, it's a really good question. And I like what Amo was saying earlier, how they initially bootstrapped, basically using whatever resources and trying to be creative to develop their business without having significant money. And I can appreciate this. I actually started my career as an entrepreneur myself. So I have a few successful businesses behind me, many of which failed, a few of which are still running today, mainly in the waste management and recycling space, sort of both in South Africa and here in Zambia. So, you know, we moved 4 years ago into the advisory space with the idea that we could have much more impact if we supported other startups, other businesses to grow, essentially. And I hear this a lot, that the number one challenge is access to finance. And I agree in some cases where, you know, if you have a working business and you need to buy equipment so that you can reach a certain scale, or if you need a vehicle for logistics and things like this, then yes, you do need access to finance. But actually, if you are creative about it, you can do a lot in that early bootstrapping phase. And we see quite often actually getting access to that finance too early can cause the failure of a great idea. You know, maybe people don't quite have a sustainable business model at the core. They don't have a really good product. They don't have revenue coming in. And suddenly they get all of this money and then spend it on the wrong things, and then the money runs out, and then the business falls apart, and actually they can be in a worse place than when they started. So to me, the number one is to get that viable or sustainable business model together, develop a product, a service that you can sell, that people are willing to pay for. Try that on a very small scale, learn from your mistakes, and grow from there. Then in terms of the access to finance, yes, grants are quite a good place to start, because usually they can be used for earlier stage ideas, things that are a bit too risky for investors or banks to lend to. I know in other parts of Africa that access to finance can be a bit easier. You know, there's some innovations happening with microfinance, impact investors, and so on. But here in Zambia, the banks are very difficult to get money out of, and often want you to take a huge risk in order to get a loan. So yeah, my suggestion would be to look at alternative or more innovative forms of finance. You know, there's again a lot of accelerators, incubators that can help with this, and actually quite a few impact investors as well. And then I think the next point on top of that is collaborating. We got to where we are through a lot of collaboration. So don't be scared of everyone who's going to compete with you, because that can often cause you to close down and not share your ideas and not open up. Often through these kind of conversations, sharing your ideas, what you're doing, can actually lead to much more interesting partnerships and other opportunities. So again, rather than looking for money to do something yourself, could you look for someone else who's already doing something and try and collaborate with them? You know, for example, if you need a food processing factory to start up a new product, is there someone who already has that facility that you could perhaps test a few things with, you know, partner with them? If you, in the logistics space, does someone have a truck that has some space on? And again, it's much more efficient if you share in that truck. Again, then we're getting into sharing economy and all these sorts of interesting things. So yeah, I think my advice from experience and from what we're hearing today would be, you know, try and do as much as you can by doing it on your own and being creative, work in partnerships, and get your core business model right before you go and look out for that funding, because that then can help you have a much, let's say, stronger and more sustainable growth curve.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. Very good comments based on a lot of experience. Of course, you will get a lot of contacts as well to give you know, support, because all counts. It's not only one thing that you know, you need to have in place, but it's a bit all at the same time. Oscar, I don't know if Oscar is here, but I don't know if he hears us and he wants to add something.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, please, Oscar.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. In terms of scaling, I'll just also reiterate what Andrew just talked about. From our own experience, a lot of progress that we made was through experimentation, experimenting with the grants that we got earlier on, and try to figure out this model. I think if a problem is effectively solved, there's always financing, there's always a pain point. If you're able to make a customer's problem go away, there's definitely good viable business out of that. And I believe that model that would help scale the business with or without either loans or investors. I was just reading, there's a popular software called Zoho. I think that's a good example of how this Indian businessman grew it to almost $1 billion corporation with very, very little investment or very, very little outside capital from a small village in India. So these things are very possible. And I think for the future of African entrepreneurs trying to build, people like us trying to build these kinds of systems, it's important that they scale to millions of people and hundreds of millions of people. I think business advisory also is very important because sometimes, for example, I stumbled on entrepreneurship. My background is actually in computer science and software engineering, but most of us just stumbled into this and we learn as we go. So that technical depth and that technical business advisory can also be very helpful to shape up models, to shape up business trajectories that can actually access the right kind of capital and scale the right way. Yeah, thank you.
And just Oscar, from your experience, the B2B,
Yeah, Isolina, I lost you.
Yes, Oscar, I was saying the B2B and the B2C, and I had for Andrew a bit the same question. Is it something from your experience that you would recommend, but already when the business is very, very much developed, or it can be something at early stages where, you know, investors could see some opportunities in the model proposed, in the innovation, you know, social investors and others will sometimes intervene earlier in the chain now. What is your experience on that?
So I would just use our first working with supermarkets and shops. And working with those supermarkets and shops, we realized that the bigger companies were the ones stocking some of the products in the supermarket that were expiring. So sometimes we go to the store manager and, you know, ask him, what's the discounted price are you going to fix on this particular product? And they say, okay, well, let us call the merchandiser from the big corporation or the big company, whether it's Nestle or Honeywell or Promasidor. So went higher up the chain, and then we started aggregating, you know, the same categories of food that were expiring, working directly with the big corporations. So from that experience, it shows that you can pretty much enter at any time, depending on the problem you're solving. If a big B2B organization or company sees that you solve that problem for them, there really isn't any limitation to whether they would, you know, accept or be onboarded on your product or service. Yeah, whether it's early stages or later on.
I see. Yeah, and Andrew, there is a few, I don't know you French, but there is a question in the chat as well if you operate in Senegal and what kind of countries you operate in. Do you want to say a word on this?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So the Africa Circular Economy Network has membership across the continent. So again, perhaps useful for me to share their website. I can drop it in the chat as well. They do have representatives in Senegal, and they're usually a good place to start. You know, usually quite like-minded people who are involved in similar things. I actually see that that Mark is also a member of the same network. So again, it sort of tends to bring like-minded people working in the circular economy space together. The question about work in Senegal, we don't do specific projects. Well, at least I don't do specific projects in Senegal at the moment. But the beauty of how things work these days is it's quite easy to work remotely. You know, again, we're all connecting all over the continent right now. So if there's a specific question, or if there's a project that you're investigating, would like to know more about if it could work in your context, or if you want to find out a bit more about some of the projects happening elsewhere, you know, reach out, I guess, to myself or to some of the other people on this call. I'm sure they'd be happy to share some ideas. Actually, while we were chatting now, just reached out to Mark because I'd like to understand more about his technology to see if it can be replicated in Zambia, because we know quite a few banana farmers who have excess materials or waste from their farms. And again, that's a great solution against polystyrene packaging, which I detest. So yeah, I think reach out. I'll drop the website for Africa Circular Economy Network in the chat. And we can see the representatives there from Senegal. Please feel free to get in touch with them and start up the conversations. Again, through collaborating and networking through events like this is how we all learn more and see what's possible and move things forward. So thank you.
So thank you very much, because indeed the part of networking is critical. Huh? I mean, to meet not only other innovators, but different people that can support you technically, financially, etc. And the training part, I think, from some of the questions, very kind of very specific to a value chain. I mean, to food and loss and waste management on a particular value chain. I think it raised the question as well of the interest of trainings and capacity building, because not the same techniques obviously are applied to the same products. I don't know if actually from the people who are now not having internet access, if Fatou or Rose want to say something more, I could allow one or two from the audience, if really they want to, they would have to raise their hand. Rose, do you have anything to add before we kind of wrap up?
No, at this moment, I'm okay. Yeah, thank you.
Merci. Et Fatou, est-ce que vous avez quelque chose d'autre?
Thank you, Fatou. Do you have anything else you would like to add, considering what has been said right now on your side? I don't know if Miss Fatou Titine Cissoko hears Isolina. Fatou, do you hear me?
Okay. So is there anybody from the audience that would like to say one word? I see Isaka, Bougoum, and Walifal. I don't know if it's still okay. You can try, Mohamed, to open the floor to Isaka, Bougoum.
Please, Isaka, the floor is yours.
Isaka, vous aviez une question, une
Oui.
contribution rapide? Oui.
Bien sûr, là, vous m'entendez?
Oui, on vous entend, oui.
Yes, we hear you. Hello.
Vous entendons, Monsieur Isaka.
We hear you, Mr. Isaka. I would like to know if we could know the process of verification of the waste. If we could have, I didn't understand very well this, Mrs. Selina Boto say, a process, a technical process on how we can value the waste and process it into feed for animals or for compost. Walifal, you also had a question? Mr. Fall, Mr. Fall. Oh, Mrs. Fall. Yes, I hear you. Yes, I would like to congratulate different panelists for their presentation, because with the ecosystem we have in Africa, we need creativity. And with the different business models that we heard about, the elements that were introduced on the compost, there still is a lot to be done. If we consider our agricultural system, there are many raw material that could be used, for example, as a biofuel to solve the energy problems of the farmers. And for the business models, the fact that we interconnect the producer and the consumer is really crucial, because if we do not take care of this, this may have a very important impact on the health of the population. I really was very happy to listen to everyone today, and this kind of initiative should be multiplied from here, from now on. Thank you, Mrs. Walifal, for your contribution. You are right when you talk about the needs of the consumers. So we'll come back on this at the end. Mrs. Isabelle Dabir, or Dabire, I don't know if I have been pronouncing your name correctly. Yes, good morning. Do you hear me? Asks Dr. Isabelle Dabire. Thank you for giving me the floor. I would like to congratulate all the panelists. I was very interested by the presentation made by Fatou, and I had a question on the preservation of juices. Are her juices preserved in natural fashion, or do they use any preservative? As we're talking about juices, it's very often difficult to ensure its preservation, and fermentation can appear sooner or later. My second question relates to the organic fertilizers. Is there a study made to see how the soil behaves afterward, and if this can give rise to weeds for the future? Several we don't know enough about the consequences of using organic fertilizers on if for example weeds are used to produce organic fertilizers. Thank you very much, Mrs. Isabelle, for your question. If Fatou is not on call anymore, we will give you her contact details. Yes, I hear you, says Mrs. Fatou Titine. So, thank you for this question. As for the juices, we produce the juice naturally. We pasteurize the juices, and we do not add preservatives. For pineapple, for example, or juice 100% pineapple, we pasteurize the product and we store it, we package it in glass bottles which are sterilized. So we use no preservatives at all for products, but there are alternatives to the usual preservatives. For example, those who want to use plastic bottles need to add preservatives to stabilize their products, but we will share our contact data with you, so I can help give you a hand the best way I can. Well, thank you very much indeed. As for the organic fertilizers, there are many studies. I see my colleagues of the FAO and the CIRAD who have worked a lot on this topic. We can send you some information on that, except if any of the participants can tell us something about that. But I believe it depends, of course, of the crop that is considered. I don't see anyone wanting to take the floor. So, Mrs. Isabelle, if you do not mind, we can send you several information on this topic, and several resource centers who could be who you could be turned to, or which you could be turned to, because I don't know exactly what crop you're talking about. There is
nothing else actually from the speakers. I think we are going to conclude. Dr Isabelle, il y a Tola Ajala qui est le dernier en fait. Mohamed, si tu peux lui ouvrir le micro, s'il te plaît.
Could you open the last?
I see, and the last hand we take. Tola Ajala, Tola?
Thank you so much.
Yes,
thank you to all the presenters. It's really been enlightening. My only question or my contribution is there needs to be an aggregation of all these technologies, and there needs to be more involvement of the smallholder farmers. For example, the biodegradable plastics and agricultural products from Uganda, rather than buying off from the farmers, why don't they become a stakeholder so that they are more involved in the whole process? I think we have great potentials in Africa. There's huge opportunities, and we need to tap into it. Thank you very much.
very much, Tola, Mr. Tola. Very interesting questions as well. And I have to say, on behalf of PAFO and COLEACP, and of course many partners, when we do select the cases we select in whatever topic we do in the innovation sessions, we make sure really that is connected to smallholders. And the entrepreneurs are not just people who make entrepreneurship and make more money and have successful businesses. It's really how much they contribute as well to the improvement and incomes of smallholders, but also to the communities and the environment they are in. That is very, very key for us, and that's how COLEACP certainly works, even with SMEs and private companies, etc. It's the social and of course the environmental aspect that is very important, but it's never enough stress. And you are very, very right in saying the aggregation of technologies and so on. It has to be developed as well, that with or that it benefits directly smallholders, and this is a point very, very well taken. If no other panelist wants to take the floor, I would thank you very much from my side, because actually it has been difficult for you, it has been difficult for us, but it has been very difficult for you today with the connection. I will give the floor to Jeremy Knops, who is the DG of COLEACP. PAFO CEO actually is in a plane currently, so he cannot speak today, but Emerance did at the beginning. And Jeremy, hopefully, having listened to all our presentations, will have a few things of interest to share, and also some of the support services that you can benefit from our side as well. And don't forget the link that has been posted many times on how to apply for support, because we are demand driven, so it's very important that you apply. If not, we cannot really help you. Jeremy, please, and thank you for being with us. Actually, I know you are also very busy today.
Merci beaucoup, Isolina. Non, ce fut un plaisir. Bonjour.
Thank you very much indeed, Isolina. It's a great pleasure for me to speak the floor. I would like to first start thanking the panel members for dedicating their time to this meeting, to exchange experiences that are as many sources of inspiration. I would like to thank PAFO, this platform that has made it possible to organize this fruitful exchange. I'm not going to be able to make a comprehensive report because many elements have been discussed. I'll try to draw the conclusions of the main points. We are a private sector, non-profit organization that manages several programs, which commonalities are that they are working on the agri-food business and all activities linked to that sector in order to pursue the Sustainable Development Goals. In that framework, in the framework of our program, as Isolina explained, we are demand-driven, which means that we systematically are asked for intervention requests from ecosystems, from producers, from competent authorities, and all these entities are contacting us to present or to discuss an issue linked to access to markets, the restructuring of our activities. And what we have observed when examining all these requests, and more specifically the requests that we have been receiving for a few months since we have launched our Fit for Market Plus operational program. And what we've noticed that when considering sustainability and food sustainability, that part of the valuing of waste is, but of course everything is linked, but we see that management and the valuing of waste are important, especially for small farmers, SMEs in the agribusiness sector. This is a topic that is most systematically expressed. Why is that? Well, we do not have we do not know about all the reasons for that, but we see that the need is a driving force, and the need associated with the opportunities, socioeconomic opportunities, when we consider the environment in which we have been evolving for a few years now, the different pre-COVID crises, the COVID pandemic, the situation derived from war in Ukraine, all these elements are of course entering into to be taken into account, but we have to associate that with the climate environmental issues. We are witnessing the direct and indirect consequences of climate change. We see that circular models are being adopted with the different levels of the supply chains. Those are the needs, but we also have the opportunities for producers and operators, and this is why we are asked to intervene. When we talk about waste management, the main entry points are competencies, know-how, information also. And there are two aspects to the question, a merely technical aspect linked to operations management, and there is a common point, which is the one of processes and notions that are valid for all the level of the value chains, elements that are valid whatever the type of waste that is being used. And then we could also, of course, dig more deeply into the different value chains, depending on the nature of the value chain, the category of goods, etc. And then we have the managerial dimension of the activity, something that is included in the development strategy or the scaling strategy of an SME with the relevant business model. And we support these activities. We provide training and organize missions, on-site missions, in order to discuss questions that are specific to the producer or to the demanding party. And we have, of course, also mentioned the access to funds. This is a problem that is present anywhere in the regions in which we are working, i.e. Asia, Pacific, and Africa. And when it comes to the valuing of waste, if we compare that to a mere marketing activity of fresh produce, we are in an economic activity that will enable us to mitigate the risk of the overall economic activities. And if you mitigate the risk, you can work on different financing tools that might be more easily accessible than the funds that are available for fresh produce marketing. So this is an activity that is included in economic development. Of course, the question of size and infrastructure are also very important, and there were very relevant interventions on the options that can be envisaged depending on the level of development. So all elements have to be combined, and those are problems that we are trying to work on, because they illustrate requests that are very often sent to us, requests for support. So once again, thank you very much to all of you, to all the participants. Thank you for having shared your opinions with us, for having been so active in the chat. Thank you very much to the team, Isolina, Axel, Mohamed, Daria. Thank you for our colleagues from PAFO for this very fruitful session, and see you soon, I hope. Thank you very much, Isolina. Thank you to everyone, and see you soon.